I'm Joe Palco, and I'm the CMO at 3dcart, and we've got a really cool webinar together for you today. We have Amy from Fortel and Ken, who's the Customer Experience Manager at Shaco Commerce Group, and he'll be joining us a little bit later into the presentation. We'll be recording this webinar, and it's going to be made available to all attendees in about a day. We'd love for you to be interactive, so please type your questions into the GoToWebinar chat box anytime throughout the webinar. We're going to assemble the questions for you, and we will cover them at the end. Fortel has been the exclusive product recommendations vendor for 3dcart for nearly 4 years. They've been a great fit for the vision of 3dcart and for ensuring that our merchants are successfully engaging their customers at every opportunity. I'd like to introduce you to Amy Weisfeld from Fortel. She's their Senior Director of Business Development, has a decade of experience in interactive sales and marketing, and is responsible for Fortel's strategic partnerships and their rapid growth. She has a passion for customer needs and goals and spent the last few years working with many e-commerce companies, big and small. She focuses on conversion optimization, e-commerce growth, and helping merchants just like you increase your sales. With this being said, I'd like to introduce you to Amy.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joe. Quite the introduction there. Hopefully the presentation lives up to all of your expectations. I am hoping you guys walk out of here obviously understanding what Fortel can do to boost your revenue and conversion, but also understanding what you can do as well from a personalization standpoint. So here's a little bit of information on exactly what Fortel does. This is a 3dcart site of ours called Karate Joe's. We work with a lot of different merchants, big and small, and I'm going to be sharing a number of different examples with you. What you see here are the circled sections are some personalized recommendations that Fortel is serving up for Karate Joe's. Running vertically down the right-hand side, we've got cross-sell recommendations. So this is the customers also bought section. I'm looking at these Sandy boxing gloves. They're exactly what I want. Show me things I'm going to buy along with these gloves. This is going to both increase my conversion as the merchant as well as the average order value or average basket size. We have a second type of recommendation running horizontally across the bottom where it says customers also viewed. That's a different type of recommendation. We call that a similar recommendation. I'm looking at these boxing gloves. They're not quite what I'm looking for, so show me gloves I might buy instead of these. So that's a little bit about what Fortel can do on the website. We also do a fair bit in email. Multi-channel simply means more success for you, the merchant. And what you see here is a section of recommendations running vertically down the right-hand side of a transactional email. We can add recommendations to lots of different types of email, but this is kind of the bottom line. A great way to think about recommendations is really as an alternative form of navigation for your customers. So a little bit about Fortel as a company. And as Joe mentioned, we are going to be archiving this presentation. I can also send it to anybody who requests as a PDF. So if that's your preferred mode of having this content and being able to share it internally with other folks in your organization, simply let us know. You will have our email addresses at the end I believe on the last slide. So we're talking about real-time dynamic enterprise-level personalization. The real-time dynamic part means that the recommendations or the recommended content changes based on a person's action on the site. So if Joe and I are both looking at those same boxing gloves, the recommendations that Joe sees will likely be different than the recommendations I see based on our real-time shopping behavior. So what Joe's looking at, if our system knows who I am because I'm cookied or I'm logged in, those recommendations will change. So that's the personalized part, the real-time, the dynamic part, and that's what makes it so much more powerful than a manual recommendation. For me, the most important part of what we do with 3dcart is that the integration is free. We have an extension built already for 3dcart, so there's no charge for integration. We also have a 10-time ROI guarantee, and I'll explain what that means in just a couple of moments. So just a little bit of background. You guys, I'm sure, are already pretty familiar with these kinds of numbers, but this is really why you should care about conversion optimization. Your sales are growing or should be growing. More leads or more sales, I mean, when you think about it, a higher conversion rate means that you get more sales and leads from your existing website traffic. So that means you can get additional sales without spending a single penny more on advertising. Raising your conversion rate also means that you're spending less advertising money for each lead or sale that you make. And then obviously more leads or sales and decreased costs add up to more profits. So that's really why we're focused on increasing conversion today. Digital ad spending is also increasing. Still, when you look at numbers, it's very typical to have about a 3% conversion rate, meaning 97% of your visitors are leaving empty-handed. Current figures are showing that about 60 to 70% of all carts are abandoned. This is costing merchants like you over $9 billion. What we found and what the current research shows is that when a customer abandons a shopping cart, that customer journey isn't over. So this is a pretty crucial point for merchants to remember. Your relationship with somebody who abandons your site is even really just beginning, and so your next move is pretty critical. For some shoppers, cart abandonment has really become a normal part of the buying cycle. So what we found is that it's really important to remove barriers to completing the sale. Those can be things like price, shipping rates, user experience, but you also want to reinforce the buying decision, welcome returning customers back, and make sure that you're retargeting. So we're going to talk about both of those things. What personalization does, and especially an automated personalization system like Foretells, is help both with conversion, which I've talked about, and also with customer acquisition. The customer acquisition is brought on primarily through adding recommendations to email and also through retargeting. So we're going to try to make this as interactive as possible. As Joe mentioned, please go ahead and enter your questions into the chat bar. You've got a question tab there in the chat bar of the GoToMeeting. I also just launched a poll. If you've got just a second and want to let us know how you're handling recommendations today, that would be awesome. It looks like so far we've got about 70 or so % of you are not doing recommendations at all, and the other 30% are struggling a little bit with 3dcart's manual recommendations. So that'll help me make sure that I'm giving you content that you need here to make the time that you spend with us as valuable as possible. So thank you for taking the time to vote there for us. I'm going to close that poll and continue on here with the presentation. So one of the reasons that a personalized recommendation system like Foretells is so much more effective than a manual system is that it is dynamic and constantly changing. So that we also can take things like changing inventory levels into account. And we would never recommend a product that you want excluded or that is out of stock. So here's some pretty typical results for us. What you're seeing here is that we tend to boost on-site revenue by about 17%, driven in large part by increased conversion and average order value or basket sizes. And then you can see some email numbers here as well. We have definitely more luck with a daily deal or a weekly marketing email than with transactional email. Transactional email is really a shipping confirmation or an order confirmation email. Remember that you're sending a lot less of those typically than you're sending of like a daily deal or a weekly or even a monthly marketing email. So that's why those numbers tend to be a little bit higher. I'm not seeing any questions come in so far, so I'm going to keep rolling. This next slide shows essentially how we measure the effect of our service. Where are we getting that 17% boost in revenue from, and how do we know how much conversion we're affecting? Essentially what we do is we bake or add event tracking from Google Analytics into the Google Analytics e-commerce overview report. Most people have Google Analytics. Not everyone will have this e-commerce overview report set up. This particular report is pretty easy to set up. 3dcart, I believe, offers this as an additional service that they sell. Foretel will do this as well. And of course, if you're working with an agency or an SEO firm, anybody like that can help you with this. Google has a lot of information on this. You can probably set this up yourself as well. But what we're looking at here is, of everybody who added an item to their cart, how many of those folks clicked on a Foretel recommendation? For this particular merchant and this particular 30-day window, about 20% of the people who added an item to their cart clicked on a recommendation. The numbers get a little more interesting down here, where we look to see, okay, great. What did those people actually do? How much money did they spend on my site? You can see here on the left-hand side that the conversion rate increased. For people who did not click on a recommendation for this particular merchant, their conversion rate was 1.36. The folks who clicked on a recommendation had a much higher conversion rate, and this is a pretty typical number for us. We typically increase conversion by about 3 to 4 times. And then you can see, because it was 20% of the folks who had this higher conversion rate, you can see how that affected the overall site's conversion rate, which would have been at 1.36 and is now at 1.52. More importantly to me, just because I'm kind of a dollars and cents scale, is how much money did those folks spend on my service, because I want to make sure that the money I'm spending on Foretel is money well spent. Foretel's pricing starts at $84 a month. We go up to about $2,000 a month. Our pricing is always online. It's based on your average monthly page views and the number of products in your catalog, and those are parent products, not SKU products. So the average merchant spends about $200 a month on Foretel. So this is where we have what we call a 10-time ROI guarantee. Let's say you are spending $200 a month on Foretel. We guarantee and want to make sure that you are making 10 times that $200 or $2,000 in revenue from our service. And this is how we measure that. We look here in the Google Analytics report at how much revenue was influenced by people clicking on Foretel recommendations. So this is a top-line revenue number for you. It doesn't take your margins into account, but it definitely gives you, the merchant, some assurance that you'll be making more money on our service than you spend. This is a floor number, not the ceiling. The vast majority of our merchants see significantly north of the 10-time ROI guarantee. But again, it does give you some assurance that that you'll be making more money than you spend. And we don't do a rev share subscription. We're a monthly SaaS-based service with a flat fee. So that's how we measure the effectiveness of our service. Moving on, we offer a whole bunch of different types of recommendations. I'm not going to get into this, although I'd be happy to discuss this in a one-on-one demo for anybody who's interested. The bottom line is that all of the recommendations are always personalized, meaning based on what the shopper is doing on the site at that exact moment. And if we know who the shopper is, because that person is cookied or logged in, then we take their past purchase history into account as well. I do see a question here that came in from Paula. Thank you. How is the 10-time ROI guarantee handled, and what happens if it's not realized? So the guarantee is handled by, let me just see if I can go back a slide to that report. Basically, if we're not making the 10-time ROI guarantee here and you're not seeing this number where it needs to be, this report is set up to be emailed to you on a monthly basis. So most of our merchants receive this report on the 1st of every month. It could be on the 15th. It could be on the 30th, whatever schedule works for you. It can be more often if you like to track these things more often. But essentially, most merchants will get this report monthly and look to see that we're meeting that 10-time ROI guarantee. If we're not, it's simply a conversation with your account manager, who will adjust our pricing. So if you're spending $200 a month on our service and the revenue influence shows $1,500 instead of $2,000, you would then be charged $150 per month instead of the $200 per month. That's the way that works. Okay, I'm going to move forward. Just a little bit of background on what sort of data we gather and how the system works. We ask for access to your 3dcart backend, to your admin, and we grab essentially two buckets of data. The first is your aggregate sales data, and here we're looking for, over a period of time, 12 months is a great amount of time for us. If you've been in business for 12 months or longer, we'll grab 12 months worth of sales data. We're looking for patterns in that sales data. What does that widget sell with? What does that t-shirt sell with? What are the patterns over time built into your sales data? If your store is just being set up on 3dcart, but you came from another platform, let's say you're changing from Evolution or from BigCommerce and you're new to 3dcart, we can grab that data from your old store. There is a small fee for doing so, but we can use that data so that there's no cold start. If you have a brand new store and you have no sales data, we typically ask you to implement Foretell, but keep us in silent mode, meaning don't turn the recommendations on, but let us just gather data for the first month or so until there's enough data to really make good recommendations from. So that's the sales data piece. We also grab through 3dcart your product catalog. We're still looking at sales data in your catalog, but it's sales data not at the product ID or SKU level, but at the product attribute or category level. So if I'm looking at a t-shirt that's made by Columbia Sportswear, and let's say this t-shirt has never sold before, Foretell will look to see, well, what do other Columbia t-shirts sell with? Or what do other Columbia shirts sell with? Or what do other women's short sleeve t-shirts sell with? So we're still looking at sales data, but we're looking at sales data at the product attribute and category level. So that's sort of a secondary data point for us. The third data point that you see here, and I know I skipped it initially, but that's this clickstream data. We're going to gather a rolling 10 weeks of clickstream data. We do that by placing a first-party cookie on your site. So that cookie is in your name. The data belongs to you. If you turn Foretell off, we do not have access to that data. We then enable you to layer business rules on top of sort of the base recommendations that have been formed. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And then we add what I consider to be the secret sauce, and that's the real-time current behavior. What are you looking at? Do I know who you are because you're cookied or logged in? And do you have items in the cart? That, again, is the real-time dynamic part of what we do, and that's the part that makes it so much more powerful than a manual recommendation. So I talked a moment ago about being able to layer business rules on top of the algorithms. This is just a small little screenshot. Obviously, I'd be happy to walk you through. This is a pretty powerful tool. It's the Foretell dashboard or Foretell's backend where you can schedule data uploads, layer business rules on top of the algorithms. Real common business rules for us are exclusions if inventory is less than or equal to 1 or particular products. We also offer promotions and various filters. An example of a filter would be if I'm looking at women's clothing, even if women's clothing is often purchased with men's clothing, you, the merchant, may decide that you only want to show other women's clothing, and so you would set up a filter for gender. We do a fair bit of automotive work where we need to make sure that year, make, model of parts matches, or electrical where something may need to be 110 versus 220. So filters can be used to make sure that the right recommendations are being provided with the various products. Keep the questions coming, please. Next, I've got a couple of different examples on 3dcart. This is an example of a Virginia candle, and you can see here, again, this section is circled. How this is shown and how it's merchandised, there's a fair bit of flexibility with. So we're not a widget that you need to make a particular amount of space for. Essentially what we look for in your product detail page template, and really all of your templates, is to be above the fold and as close to the add to cart button as possible. But we'll work with the page that you've got. We don't want you to change your templates really in any way, and we'll do this integration for you. Some merchants choose to have an add to cart button. Some prefer not to. Some prefer a cleaner look. Having an add to cart button definitely increases conversion. Some merchants choose to show rating and review stars. Some do not. So you'll see that while all of these integrations look similar, they're also all a little bit different. Here's, and the product detail page is the highest converting, most effective page to add recommendations to. Again, think about recommendations really as an alternative form of navigation for your customer. We're making it very easy for them to engage with content that they're likely or predisposed to engage with based on our algorithms. So the view cart is the second highest effective and most well-performing page. That's what I'm showing you here. This is, again, another 3dcart customer called Smoke Tech. We're pretty product agnostic. We work in a lot of different verticals, and everything that we do is, for the most part, mathematically based. So we don't care about language. We don't care about currency. We don't really care what type of product you sell. Because we've been with 3dcart for such a long time, we have a lot of 3dcart customers. I think that number is approaching 70 or so. So chances are we're already working with a 3dcart customer in your vertical. What you see here is kind of a nice stylized application here of our recommendations. We're below all of the high converting parts of the page, and we've got scroll bars here so we can actually scroll through additional recommendations. Another thing I should mention about Foretell is that we always load after the main conversion items on your page. We want to make sure that we don't adversely affect your page load times, the speed with which your site loads. We do load very, very quickly. We have done quite a bit of load testing, and we load with about 150 milliseconds. But you may see, if you go to LukiGames.com or you go to SmokeTech.com, you may see Foretell recommendations filling in, and that's really intentional. This is a homepage example where we're serving personalized recommendations on the homepage, also a nice location for us. The cool thing about the homepage is if I'm anonymous, I come to LukiGames.com, I direct load their URL into my browser. I've never been on the site before, and I land here on the homepage. I'm going to see site-wide top sellers. But if I come into LukiGames.com through the side door, because I did a Google product search and I landed on a game, and then I go to the homepage, which is very, very common, Foretell knows something about me. We know that I've looked at a particular game. So these recommendations are not site-wide top sellers, but are actually personalized to the person. So I'm going to move on now and talk just a smidge about recommendations for mobile. We're finding that somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 40% of our merchants' traffic is coming through mobile. We do have a blog posting on how to see what percentage of your traffic is coming from mobile versus tablet versus desktop traffic. So if you're using Google Analytics and you want some assistance with figuring out what percentage of your traffic is on mobile, again, just ping us after the fact and we'll direct you to that blog posting. Conversion is much lower on mobile, and personalization is pretty key, again, because the screen size is so small. You want to make sure that you're bubbling up content. We're going to talk next about personalization in email marketing, and I'm just going to throw up another poll here for you guys to let us know what you're doing with email marketing. So you should see that on your screen shortly, wondering what you're doing if you're adding recommendations or personalized content in any way to your email marketing. I showed you some examples, or one example just very briefly at the start of our conversation, which was adding recommendations to a transactional email. We're doing a fair bit of that in 3dcart. We're also able to measure the effectiveness very similarly to the way we're measuring the effectiveness of the web recommendations. So we're adding event tracking and being able to look to see how many people are clicking from the recommendation in the email to the website, and then how much revenue did that bring in for the site. We have our 10-time ROI guarantee offered on email as well. So the numbers so far, I'm not sure if you guys can see the numbers. It looks like about 37% of you are not doing anything with email yet. The same percentage isn't but wants to. Some of you are using third-party tools, and about 10% of you are trying to do things manually. So that's great. Thank you for taking the time to do that. That gives me an idea of where you all stand. I do have a couple of examples here on adding recommendations to email. What Foretel does is we enable you to set up the recommendation block within our dashboard. We're ESP agnostic, meaning we don't care what email service provider you use. For the transactional email, if you're using 3dcart, that's fantastic. If you're using MailChimp or Bronto or a list track or a constant contact, we've integrated already into all of those ESPs, and so very easy to do so, and always willing to work with new ESPs as well. So what you see here is an email that is being sent by Golf E-Tail. The merchant is selecting which products to highlight in the daily deal email. So in this case, Mark from Golf E-Tail says, I want to highlight these shorts and this belt on this particular day. And Foretel then adds this recommendation block. The recommendations that are shown here, again, are going to vary per person. So if Joe Palco from 3dcart has purchased from Golf E-Tail in the past, the recommendations that he sees will be related to his past purchase as well as to the shorts and the belts. If I have not purchased from Golf E-Tail before, so I'm an anonymous prospect with no purchase history, the recommendations that I see will be related to the shorts and the belt based on the aggregate behavior of what people have purchased and viewed in the past with those shorts and belts, or with shorts and belts from those categories. So we're also doing a fair bit now with abandoned cart and abandoned browse. Abandoned cart, most of you will have heard about already. There's somebody puts an item in their cart, they leave without buying that item. It's becoming more and more common to add, to send them a follow-up abandoned cart email. Looks something like this. I have a pretty cool abandoned cart email template. So if you're starting to put together abandoned cart emails and you need some assistance about exactly what they should look like, what the content should be, how effective they can be, again, ping me, email me after the webinar, and I'll be happy to send you the template. Main thing is helpful tone, and again, adding dynamic product recommendations, because you don't know why somebody abandoned. Did they abandon because they got distracted, their child was crying in the back room, or did they abandon because they found a cheaper price someplace else, or they decided this was a product they didn't want. So adding the dynamic recommended products gives them some additional choices, and again makes it very easy to drive them back to your site and help them convert and complete that purchase. We are starting to do that as well with abandoned browse, meaning somebody was on your site, spent a certain amount of time on your site, and then left. So even if they don't add an item to their cart, we are tracking the last items that were viewed and able to put an email campaign into place on abandoned browse. This is a pretty typical, I just wanted to make sure I was giving you guys some real kind of meaty content that you could take with you, even if you decide that you're not quite ready to move forward with an automated solution like Foretel's. So this is an example of conversion rates and revenue raised by an abandoned cart email campaign. This is a fairly typical campaign that you trigger an automated email upon abandonment 24 hours later, and then somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 to 7 days later. So you can see there's a fair bit of revenue to be recaptured, which is why these are becoming so popular. One of the keys to this, obviously, is making sure that you're capturing the person's email address as early in their shopping process as possible. We are now able to add this kind of unlock and offer email prompt at the start of a shopping session. So if you go to charbroil.com, you'll see on the right-hand side this instant 10% savings. This is a little slider that you can expand or contract, and it has been very successful at capturing email. This is typically a pay-for-performance model on this unlock and offer. So if that's something you're interested in, again, let me know. I mentioned earlier that we work with a lot of different merchants. You're going to hear from Ken Hammond next. And before I turn it over to you, I just kind of wanted to give you the breakdown of some various verticals. We do a lot in apparel and clothing, a fair bit in home and furnishings. We've gotten fairly popular in healthcare and tools and hardware, and you can see these categories. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Ken to talk about his experience on 3dcart with Foretel. Thank you.
Yeah, sounds great. Can you all hear me okay? We can. Just wanted to make sure. Good stuff, guys. Hey, it's Ken Hammond here, and I'm with Shaco Commerce Group. We're an e-commerce portfolio of websites that deal mostly with the health and fitness industry, which we're really excited to talk about Foretel. And I do have to say that I'm not getting compensated at all. Not even a T-shirt or a Foretel mug, hint, hint. But it's always fun to talk about something you're passionate about. I'm the customer experience manager for all of our websites here, and if you're anything like me, we're always looking for ways to automate a better experience for our customers. Whatever we can do online, because as you know, a website cannot be just static. It has to be dynamic. It has to change as people are clicking on different pages, showing them more relevant results. And if anybody searched on Amazon before and seen their marketing and all the wonderful things that they do, that's why I love Foretel so much, because they're giving me an easy way to implement some of those cool strategies. And a couple things I wanted to just share with you real fast. Again, like we said, our biggest customers are in the yoga industry and the health and fitness industry right here. And I think on the screen right now you can see kind of like what we're offering here. Again, more of a personalized experience for somebody. Because when it comes to going to any site, people don't know what they don't know, right? So if they're interested in mats, they might not even know that they need a bolster to go with that, or they need a block or a strap or anything like that. So if anything, it makes it so easy to give them a better experience and actually make them more happy with their purchase. Because just like anything, when you go shopping, you might go in there for one particular item, but if the salesperson or the website doesn't tell you, oh, hey, by the way, if you love this, you're also going to want to get this, you're actually going to thank them for making the whole experience better, and obviously more money and better conversions for the business as well. So regard to Foretel, again, to share our experience, I think it's been close to a year now since we've been working with them, and it's one of those things, as a marketing guy, everything's based on return on investment, right? When I present anything to my CEO, it's one of those things, hey, what's the ROI on it, right? And luckily, like we were talking about earlier, the 10 times guarantee that they have, again, I had no question about whether they were going to, honor that or whatever, but it was so easy to take the plunge and show how fast conversions not only rose, and everything else rose. As you see by the slide, 3.5 times more products reviewed. The time on the site went up, so that means they're educating themselves more. They're being exposed to more of our products, and of course, revenue goes up and conversion rate goes up. That's the most important metric I always look at, is the conversion rate. And there's the numbers right there. Thank you for forwarding that for me. And that's the whole thing. And when we decided to work with Foretel, hopefully you will too. It's so simple. And I don't know about your company, but, you know, we don't have a huge IT department, but it does take time to get things done when it comes to programming or anything to change on the website, right? That's always like a sticking point. You got to have all these different meetings and who's going to get this done. And you got to put it in Asana or Basecamp or whatever. What we loved so much was basically, since 3dcart's so easy to work with, that it was pretty much, here's a quick little login, give them access to our site, and then it's pretty much done. It's out of my hands right there. They actually go in, they do the mock-ups, they say, hey, it's going to look great on this page, it's going to look great on this page here, and it was so simple. And again, I mean, probably like you, you don't have a lot of time to be hands-on. You need somebody to help you with the whole process, and that's what the guys at Fortel have done, and with Amy and Wendy and Tina over there helping out, again, it was very simple and easy to use. And what else do I want to talk about? Also, you guys brought up an amazing point because, yes, thank you, future plans, was the whole email thing. And this is something that I'm also in charge of, you know, doing all the weekly promotions and helping segmenting out our customers from on our email lists. And, you know, this is something that I'm very excited to start using. And we've just been exposed to it, and we're excited to add it to our whole email marketing plan. Is the whole thing, if you do any weekly promotions at all, you know you can't be all things to all people on your list, right? You can't just have one sale that's going to talk to everybody. There's, you know, you're always going to be hitting that certain open rate that not everybody's going to be excited about buying from you. And this is what I'm really excited about, because now that Fortel has all of our buyers' information and all their past clicks and all the products that they looked at, imagine, you know, just like that whole thing. Now when I do my weekly promo, yes, we'll have a general sale that's going on for the week, but when they're scrolling down, it's going to show them a few of the items that they were already clicked on and read about. So that's going to be more personalized just to them, which pretty much for me solves the whole segmentation thing. So I don't have to worry about coming up, well, I think yoga moms between 30 and 50 years old prefer pink mat, so I'm going to put a pink mat in there. I'm not that smart at all. I can't sit here and try to segment out all these different people like they were talking about. Their engine does all that for me. So I'm really excited for the email, guys. Looking forward to add that and see even better results that we have on our website. And one quick thing in closing, guys, this is technology, and sometimes things break, right? Have you ever had anything break on your website? I think maybe twice, but I want to say only one time that I remember something didn't update right, and one of the images that showed on our website was not displaying properly or something, right? And it was a simple email. I got on the phone with them real quick, and they ended up fixing it in less than an hour. So that's what I really love about Fortel too. I don't know if you've used any other services where you're almost afraid to pick up the phone because you know they're not going to answer. The people at Fortel love service. They make you feel like you're a partner as well, because obviously if we don't succeed, they're not going to succeed either. So that's what I love about Fortel. So thank you, guys.
Thank you, Ken. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Unprompted there on the customer service piece. I always like to hear that. I'm of course on the sales side, and but we're a pretty tight team. We work closely together, and we definitely bend over backwards for our customers and work hard to make sure that you guys are happy. So thank you. So this is kind of the end of our scripted part, everybody. We talked about increasing sales with big data personalization, and we talked about reducing cart abandonment and therefore increasing sales with remarketing. So I'm gonna turn it over to Wendy now to just kind of ping us with any questions that we haven't answered yet.
Hi guys, thanks so much. I've been getting a ton of questions, and I've been responding where I can, and I've been putting off some people because there have been some great questions. Not necessarily in any order. I was asked what's ROI, and you know we get so filled with three-letter acronyms. I apologize. That stands for return on investment. Amy, what's your thoughts on our 10x ROI guarantee?
Well, I've talked a little bit about that already, but again, if you're spending $200 a month on our service, we want to make sure that we are influencing at least 10 times that in revenue for the merchant. So 200 times 10 is 2,000. We want to make sure that we're influencing $10,000 in revenue on your site, and we measure that through the Google Analytics e-commerce overview report. So if you don't have the e-commerce overview report set up, I urge you to find a way to do that, either through 3dcart or through Fortel or through some other third party, because it enables you to better manage your business, know what your conversion rate is, know what your average order value is, know how much revenue you're deriving from your site, and from additional tools like Fortel's.
Excellent, thank you. From Paula, it's a great question, and it really goes back to the technology slide. And we hear this a lot. I know, Amy, I know you've heard it. Isn't this the same as related items that I set up for my products?
So that's a great point. The related items that you're setting up through 3dcart, that's what we consider to be a manual recommendation, meaning you are going in as the merchandiser through the back end and saying, when somebody looks at this t-shirt, I want to recommend this pair of shorts. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a great place to start. It's just you're not engaging the customer as well as you could. But with a system like Fortel's, we will look to see what are people buying when they buy that t-shirt, what are people viewing when they view that t-shirt, and what has this particular person shopping on my site looked at that might influence or change what he or she should be shown. So manual recommendations merchandised through 3dcart's backend, great way to start, just not a great way to finish. Another point I would make is that especially for larger merchants, we do a fair bit of A/B testing. So you could test 3dcart's manual recommendations versus Fortel's. We can set this up for you. There is a one-time fee for that. I think it's $2.99. But you could actually say which of these two ways of handling recommendations is generating more revenue for me.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. Got another question, and this is from Bob. The issue with our personalization software with another cart is that most visitors don't log in until they decide to check out. So only global personalization was applied. How do we deal with this? So if they're anonymous shoppers, if you will.
So two things. Again, it kind of goes back to that same technology slide, but we are gathering the real-time shopping behavior of the person, whether they are logged in or not. So if, let's make Joe shop on Ken's site for a minute. If Joe is shopping at YogaDirect.com and he's not logged in, we cookie Joe, and so we know what Joe is looking at that moment in real time. I know whether he's looked at a yoga mat or a strap or blocks, and as he goes through the site, his recommendations will change based on what he is viewing.
Excellent. Excellent. So got many different types of email questions. So one of them, and the question was specific about MailChimp. Do we link to Christina's MailChimp account? But I think globally, if you could talk about how we interface with email service providers.
So the recommendations are formatted or set up in Fortel's dashboard, which you got a tiny little sneak peek of. But again, I'm happy to do a one-on-one demo for anybody who's interested. And what we then need to make sure is that we are passing back and forth the right variables between the email service provider and Fortel. So, for example, if I'm sending a shipping confirmation email, if you're sending a shipping confirmation email, and let's just say it's going through MailChimp for a minute, we need to make sure that the product ID or IDs or the order ID or ID, so what was purchased, that is formatted correctly so that Fortel knows what those products are. So for a MailChimp, we've already integrated with MailChimp, so we know what those variables are. Product ID, order ID, customer ID. Same obviously is true in 3dcart. We've integrated with, I think we're up to 10 or 11 different email service providers. And then we do a fair bit of just kind of other. So if it's somebody that we haven't already integrated with, it's just making sure that we get the variables formatted correctly.
Excellent, excellent. And I'm sorry, sort of a tangent question. Are the email recommendations based on the customer's email? And if not, how do you know what their interest is?
So ideally, we hook, we match user ID from the platform, so through 3dcart, to email address. And then, yes, we know who the person is and what they've purchased, either in that moment because it's a transactional email or in the past. So yes, we try to identify who the person is. If we have an email address for the person, but, excuse me, there's no user ID on the platform on 3dcart, meaning they haven't purchased anything from your site before, but they're a prospect on your email list, then the email is not personalized to the person, but the recommendations are based on the aggregate shopper behavior, so total shopper behavior.
Great. Sort of taking a step back, we were asked a really great question by Steve. Are we running our service with on any other 3dcart sites that also use Nextopia, which for those of you who aren't familiar with, they're an online search capability? And the answer there is yes. And kind of the more interesting part of the question, I think, is how will Foretell play with Nextopia or other third-party tools?
So yeah, we work very well alongside Nextopia. Another common search tool that our merchants use is called Search Spring. And essentially, Foretell works alongside those services. We do have the ability to add recommendations to search results, meaning we look at the top 3 or 4 search results that were returned, and we can show cross-sell or similar recommendations related to those products. So we don't actually integrate with a third-party search tool, but we work very well alongside that tool.
Excellent. Thank you. No, that's great. And let's see.
Really? No questions for Ken? I'm shocked.
I know. I'm sorry, Ken.
It's all good. Hey, I'll just make up questions. How's that?
Yeah. Well, in hearing some of the questions, is there anything else that you'd like to share based on what people have been asking about with your experiences?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was the same concerns I had before. I mean, for me, it was knowing that it was easy to set up. It wasn't going to take a lot of, internal resources. The next, potential challenge we had was, hey, is this going to make money for us? Again, when I present this to our CEO, is it an easy sell? Like, yes, let's do this. It's no risk at all. And of course, is it going to be a better experience for our customers? And that's the whole thing that I'm really trying to move everything on all of our websites to make it a more personalized experience. I mean, gone are the days, you could just have one store for everybody and, buy it here. But everything has to be dynamic. And again, that's what makes every page on our site so valuable now. And it's only going to get more valuable based on, our customers clicking and viewing and time on site to give us even more data to make it even more personalized. So very simple for us.
I swear we're not paying him to say all of this. Thank you, Ken, for giving your perspective. Amy got a question about Google Analytics. Is there some kind of additional code or something that has to be added or set up in order to measure the impact of Foretell?
So yes, there is, and we do that for the merchant. I have a Google Analytics tutorial document that details exactly what code is added where and how to set up the advanced segments so that you can see that lift. But the easy answer is yes, and we do that for you.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I just got 3 great questions, so I'm trying to read, think about answers, and going back to the 10x ROI guarantee, is this a promotional tool or is it for the life of the service?
It is for the life of the service. Great question. And something that I haven't mentioned, and I probably should have put in the slide, but we do have, for anybody on this webinar, we do have a a special discount that we are offering. If you sign up within a week of this presentation, a week of this webinar, and you use the code ACTNOW when you sign up, you will receive 20% off of your first 2 months of service. So that's a pretty stellar deal. It's something that we're doing just really for this webinar with 3dcart. ACTNOW is the code. But the 10-time ROI guarantee is an ongoing guarantee month over month.
And I just sent out the Act Now code for everybody. Got a great question from Paula, and really trying to understand kind of how big do you need to be to take advantage of the automation?
Oh, great question. So if you have under 50 products, it really doesn't make sense to use Foretell, because the manual recommendations in 3dcart will give you some boost, and that's probably sufficient for such a small catalog size. When you start to approach higher numbers in excess of 100 and certainly hundreds and thousands, it becomes much more difficult to manage that manually. We also look for a certain number of transactions, and typically we look for 2 to 3 times the number of transactions as the number of products in your catalog. So if you have 100 products in your catalog, we're looking for about 200 transactions monthly.
Excellent. Excellent. So I got an interesting question that maybe both Amy and Joe might be able to comment on. I got it from Eric, and he says, my site, my business is only about 3 months old. How do I know whether the traffic on my site is not just competitors checking me out, as opposed to actual shoppers looking to buy, from whom I could then potentially convert? So it's a little bit beyond us, but I thought it was a great question.
I would say that's really the importance of having the Google Analytics e-commerce overview report set up. The Google Analytics audience overview report shows you things like how many people are on your site, where they're coming from, time spent on site, pages viewed, and that's useful. But the e-commerce overview report in particular shows you how many people are actually purchasing from you. And at the end of the day, those are the numbers that you really want to focus on. So I would say making sure that you have Google Analytics hooked up correctly, and take a look at those 2 reports, the audience overview and the e-commerce overview.
I agree with you 100% on that.
Awesome. Yeah, anything else, Joe, along those lines?
No, I mean, analytics is really what you're going to have to turn to. It's not, not necessarily only Google Analytics. I mean, we offer other analytics here, like Smarter Stats and such, where you can, if people have questions about a lot of times we do here at 3dcart is if there's issues with lots of traffic and very little conversions, we have something called Smarter Stats, I believe, that we'll put on to try to determine like where the traffic is coming from. But Google Analytics is totally sufficient.
Awesome. Thank you.
Great. So I'm not familiar. So this is an interesting question. What role does effective content reinforce our services? This is from Timothy. It's a great question, and it's a bit nuanced. Amy?
Well, absolutely effective content. I mean, content is king and has been for a long time. So, I mean, I think of content in a couple of different buckets. One is making sure that people can access and see the content, which is a lot of what we've been talking about in terms of recommendations, and putting the right content in front of somebody at the right moment in time. But there are other parts and pieces to content, which is, how is that content packaged? Do you have nice sized images, thumbnail images versus larger images, making sure that your images aren't fuzzy, making sure that your call to action buttons are big and bold and, easily seen. So I'm sort of perhaps dancing around the question a little bit. I think that the question is a great one, but a little bit outside of our scope. The bottom line is content is extremely important, and both how it's prepared and packaged.
Excellent. Excellent. That's pretty much it for the questions. Thank you so much. They've been great.
So we're going to say goodbye, and thank you guys for joining us. There's a short little exit poll if you want to give us your any feedback. And of course, if you want us to follow up with you after the webinar, please let us know. Thank you for spending part of your busy day with us. We really appreciate it, and hope you guys have learned a few things about personalization and increasing conversion on your sites. Have a great day.